You know, there's a special kind of heavy silence that hangs in a house where you're constantly judged. It's not just the absence of noise, it's the oppressive weight of unspoken disappointment. The quiet hum of their disapproval, for me. Alex, my small, cluttered attic apartment, technically still part of my parents' house, was often filled with that silence. If you've ever lived under the thumb of a family that measures success only in dollar signs and traditional career paths, while you're out here trying to build something truly unique, then you probably get what I'm talking about. Because my family had a favorite word for me, failure. And trust me, you won't believe what happened next. So, grab a snack, settle in. Because this is my story, the one where their labels fueled my fire, and a fleet of black cars pulled up to my door for a private meeting. If you've ever been called a failure by the people who should have believed in you most, drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your experiences. I'm Alex, 28 years old, and for the past 4 years, I've been what my family politely or not so politely calls finding myself. What I was really doing was building a next-generation AI for personalized learning. It was a passion project, born from my frustration with traditional education systems and my deep belief that technology could make learning more accessible and engaging for everyone. My background was in computer science, but I'd veered off the corporate path after a soul-crushing stint at a big tech firm. I wanted to create, not just conform. This, of course, did not sit well with the Millers. My family, my dad, Richard, was a successful real estate developer, a man who built empires out of steel and concrete. My mom, Eleanor, was a socialite, obsessed with appearances and maintaining the perfect family image. And then there was my older brother, Michael. Michael was their golden child, a rising star in investment banking, married to a suitable wife, living in a sprawling McMansion that Dad probably helped finance. Michael was everything they wanted me to be: traditional, financially secure, and, in their eyes, successful. I, on the other hand, was living in their attic, coding away on a project that, to them, was just playing on the computer. My small stipend from a few freelance web design gigs barely covered my expenses, and the grant applications for my AI project seemed to disappear into a black hole of rejection letters. I wasn't bringing in a 6-figure salary. I wasn't married. I didn't own a fancy car. Therefore, in their eyes, I was a failure. The comments were relentless, subtle and not so subtle. Over Sunday dinner, Dad would sigh dramatically. "So, Alex, still working on that newest computer thing? Don't you think it's time to get a real job? Michael just closed another massive deal. Bought himself a new Porsche," Mom would add, with a saccharine smile. "You know, dear, your cousin Emily just got promoted to senior manager at her firm. She has such a nice life, so stable. Don't you want stability?" Alex, Michael, smug as ever, would offer his advice. "Look, Alex, I get it. The passion thing, but eventually, you need to grow up. The real world isn't a coding sandbox. You need to make money. You need to contribute." He'd say this while eating the meal I'd often cooked, in a house whose utility bills I helped offset with my tiny freelance earnings, which, of course, they never acknowledged. Their favorite phrase, often uttered with a dismissive wave of the hand, was, "When are you going to stop being such a failure, Alex?" It wasn't always said directly to my face. More often, it was whispered to relatives at family gatherings, or implied in their frustrated sighs when I declined an invitation to a networking event that clearly wasn't aligned with my goals. I overheard Mom once telling her friend on the phone, "Oh, Alex still in the attic. Such a waste of talent. He just doesn't apply himself." It cut deep. Every time, I knew my work had potential. I knew that what I was building was groundbreaking, that it could genuinely change lives for millions of students globally. But in their world, if it didn't generate immediate, tangible wealth or fit into a traditional corporate structure, it was worthless. My self-worth, which I had painstakingly tried to build after leaving the corporate world, was constantly being chipped away by their relentless criticism. The attic was my refuge, my laboratory. It was a chaotic mess of whiteboards covered in algorithms, monitors displaying lines of code, and stacks of research papers. But it was my chaos, my space. Here, I could escape their judgment and lose myself in the intricate logic of my AI. My project, codenamed Ignite, was designed to adapt learning content in real time based on a student's individual learning style, pace, and knowledge gaps, making education truly personalized. It was ambitious, complex, and required immense dedication. My only confidant, the only person who truly understood my vision, was my former professor, Dr. Anya Sharma. She was a brilliant mind in AI research and had become my informal mentor after I left the corporate world. I'd occasionally email her updates, or meet for coffee, pouring out my frustrations about my family and my slow progress. "Alex," she'd say, her eyes twinkling, "they don't understand innovation. They understand spreadsheets and dividends. You're building something that could be truly revolutionary. Don't let their small-mindedness diminish your vision. The world needs people like you, who dare to dream beyond the conventional." Her words were a lifeline, a balm to my wounded spirit. The pressure from my family mounted steadily. They saw my long hours in the attic not as dedication, but as idleness. "Why are you always holed up in there, Alex?" Mom would complain. "Come down, interact, you need to network, not sit on your computer all day." Dad started dropping hints about investing in my future, which I knew meant forcing me into a corporate job he approved of. "I could get you an interview at Northwood Investments, Alex," he'd say, leaning back, smug. "Good people, stable job. You could learn a lot." The unspoken threat was clear. Accept his help, or continue to be a failure. Michael, sensing the increasing tension, often took their side, reinforcing their narrative. "Dad's just trying to help. Alex, you're being stubborn. There's no shame in admitting you need a leg up." His condescension stung, especially from a brother who, despite his own success, had always been secretly insecure. I tried to explain my project once, tentatively, over dinner. "It's an AI-driven platform for adaptive learning," I began, my voice filled with suppressed excitement. "It learns the students' unique needs and tailors the curriculum, making it more efficient and engaging than anything currently on the market." Dad scoffed, spooning mashed potatoes onto his plate. "AI sounds like a fancy video game. Alex, how does it make money? What's your business model? Who are your investors?" He wasn't interested in the innovation, only the immediate, tangible return on investment. "It's in the early stages of development," I tried to explain. "I'm still building the prototype, refining the algorithms. Once it's ready, I'll seek seed funding. Then Series A." "That's seed funding," Mom interrupted, rolling her eyes. "That means no money now, right? Just more of you sitting in the attic, hoping for a miracle. Really, Alex? When are you going to get serious?" Their dismissal was crushing. They couldn't see the potential, the vision, the years of work I was pouring into it. They saw only the lack of immediate financial reward, the non-traditional path, and their convenient label, failure. It became a self-fulfilling prophecy in their minds, pushing me deeper into my attic, deeper into my secret world of code and algorithms. The emotional toll was immense. Every snide comment, every dismissive glance, chipped away at my confidence. There were nights I doubted everything, wondering if they were right. Maybe I was a failure. Maybe I should just give up, get a real job, and conform to their expectations. But then I'd look at my code, at the intricate logic, at the potential impact of Ignite, and a fierce resolve would harden within me. No, I wouldn't quit. I wouldn't surrender. I believed in this, even if no one else did. My biggest secret, the one I guarded most fiercely, was the progress of Ignite. What my family didn't know was that my algorithms were working. The prototype was performing beyond my wildest expectations. The adaptive learning engine was robust, intuitive, and remarkably accurate in identifying student needs. I was getting closer to something truly revolutionary. And then, a few months ago, the first spark of real, external validation. I got an email from a prominent venture capital firm specializing in edtech, Catalyst Ventures. They had seen a small demo I'd quietly posted on a niche developer forum, and they were intrigued. They wanted a private meeting to discuss a potential seed investment. My heart leaped. This was it, the breakthrough, but I knew I couldn't tell my family. Their skepticism would crush it, or worse. They'd try to take credit or manage the deal for me. So, I kept it completely under wraps, conducting my meetings at remote coffee shops or borrowed co-working spaces, pretending to be meeting freelance clients. The meetings with Catalyst Ventures were intense. I presented my vision, my algorithms, my prototype. They grilled me on my business model, my market strategy, my scalability. I answered every question with confidence, fueled by years of meticulous work and an unwavering belief in my project. They were impressed, very impressed. The discussions evolved from seed funding to something much, much bigger. They saw the potential. They saw the revolution. As the negotiations deepened, the pressure at home intensified. My increasing secretiveness, as they perceived it, only fueled their criticism. "Alex is always out now," Mom would complain. "Probably just meeting friends, wasting time, still no real job offers." Dad would retort, "He needs a kick in the pants. Eleanor, maybe we should cut off his allowance for utilities. That'll make him serious." The allowance was my small contribution to the household, which I was secretly saving for my escape. I just smiled, vaguely, letting their words wash over me. They thought they were seeing a failure who was wasting time. They had no idea I was on the cusp of signing a deal that would redefine my entire future. A deal that was bringing a fleet of black cars to my door. They thought I was lost. I was, in fact, about to be found, spectacularly. The stage was set for their profound, undeniable shock. The hushed disapproval, the constant undercurrent of my family's judgment, had been the soundtrack of my life for as long as I could remember. It wasn't just about my current venture with Ignite. It was a pattern, deeply ingrained, that defined my existence within the Miller household. If you've ever grown up in a family where love felt conditional, tied to a very specific, often unattainable, definition of success, then you know the emotional tightrope I walk daily. I remembered countless childhood dinners, where Michael, my older brother, would be praised for his perfect report card, his athletic achievements, his sensible career aspirations. Meanwhile, my own budding interests were met with polite, yet dismissive, smiles. When I spent hours meticulously drawing intricate, fantastical creatures, Dad would pat my head and say, "That's nice, Alex, but you're so smart with numbers, you should focus on something practical, like engineering." When I spent my allowance on coding books instead of new clothes, Mom would sigh, "Oh, Alex, you spend too much time on that computer. You should socialize more, like Michael." They never explicitly said my passions were worthless. They just consistently, subtly, made it clear that they weren't valuable, not in the way Michael's pursuits were, not in the way that would bring prestige to the Miller name. Their version of love was acceptance if you conformed, praise if you achieved what they deemed worthy. Anything outside that box was met with a chilling indifference, or worse, veiled contempt. This constant belittling had left deep scars. I carried a gnawing self-doubt, an internal critic that echoed their voices, even after I graduated with a computer science degree and landed a good corporate tech job. I felt a pervasive sense of inadequacy. I was technically successful by their standards, but I felt stifled, creatively bankrupt. That's why I left. I craved purpose, innovation, the freedom to build something of my own, and that pursuit, in their eyes, immediately relegated me back to failure status. My attic office became more than just a workspace. It was a fortress against their negativity. The clatter of my keyboard, the glow of my monitors, the intricate logic of my code, these were my armor. Here, in my sanctuary, their words couldn't reach me, couldn't chip away at my resolve. I'd put on noise-canceling headphones, not just to block out distractions, but to block out the insidious whispers of their judgment that seemed to permeate the very walls. The past year, especially, had been a grueling emotional gauntlet. My project, Ignite, was nearing completion, requiring increasingly intense focus. This meant longer hours, more caffeine, and even more isolation. To my family, this simply reinforced their narrative. Alex is still in his room, wasting time on that computer. They saw my late nights as laziness, my intense focus as avoidance. They couldn't, or wouldn't, grasped the concept of intellectual labor that didn't involve a suit and tie, or a direct deposit from a Fortune 500 company. Their world was tangible real estate, stock markets, social events. My world was abstract, built on lines of code and algorithms existing in the digital ether. It was a language they simply refused to learn. Michael was perhaps the most frustrating. He'd occasionally drop by my attic, not out of genuine interest, but out of a sense of familial obligation, or perhaps to deliver another dose of their tough love. "Hey, little bro," he'd say, leaning against my doorframe, impeccably dressed. "Still playing with your little apps? Dad was asking if you've thought about going back to consulting. The market's hot right now." "It's not apps, Michael," I'd reply, trying to keep my voice even. "It's a robust AI engine designed to revolutionize education. And no, I haven't." He'd chuckle, a condescending sound that always grated. "Right. Revolutionize education. Look, I get it. You want to be a visionary, but visions don't pay the bills. Alex, Ethel Corp could use someone with your brain. You know, a real job where you actually contribute to something that matters." "I am contributing to something that matters," I'd snap, my patience wearing thin. "Just because it doesn't line your pockets with commission fees doesn't make it worthless." He'd just shrug, a smug smile on his face. "Whatever you say, Alex. Just don't come crying to me when you're 40 and still revolutionizing education from mom and dad's attic." His words, and those of my parents, were constant, insidious jabs. They wounded me, no doubt. They fueled moments of intense self-doubt, making me question my path, my sanity. Was I being naive? Was I chasing a fool's errand? Could I truly build something impactful without their approval, without their financial backing, without fitting into their narrow definition of success? But these very jabs also became a perverse form of fuel. Every insult, every condescending remark, solidified my resolve. I wouldn't just prove them wrong, I would prove myself right. I would show them that success wasn't just about money, but about purpose. It was about creating something meaningful, something that contributed to the world in a way they couldn't possibly understand. My only tether to sanity, the only person who truly understood and championed my vision, was Dr. Anya Sharma. She was a beacon of intellectual curiosity and unwavering belief. Our coffee meetings, usually at a quiet, independent cafe away from my family's usual haunts, were my therapy sessions. I'd share my technical breakthroughs, my frustrations with funding, and the relentless negativity from home. "Alex," she'd say, stirring her chai latte, "your family operates from a scarcity mindset. They believe there's only one path to security and success, and anything else is a deviation. It's a limitation of their own worldview, not a reflection of your potential." She emphasized the groundbreaking nature of Ignite, reminding me of its potential to disrupt a multi-billion-dollar industry. She connected me with online forums for indie tech developers, fostering a sense of community that countered my family's isolation. "You're building the future, Alex," she'd tell me. "Don't let them drag you back into the past." Her encouragement was a powerful antidote to their negativity. It allowed me to believe in myself, even when my own family didn't. I visualized Ignite not just as a piece of software, but as a vehicle for my own validation, a way to prove my worth not to them, but to myself. The project itself was a beast, demanding every ounce of my mental energy. I was coding new algorithms, refining the user interface, conducting stealthy A/B testing with a small group of online beta testers I'd found through Dr. Sharma's network. The breakthroughs were exhilarating, the setbacks frustrating. I lived and breathed Ignite. My family, oblivious to the intense intellectual labor happening just above their heads, continued their criticisms. They saw my attic lights on late into the night and interpreted it as me playing games or avoiding responsibilities. They saw me decline social invitations to network for my project and called it antisocial behavior. They saw my focused intensity as a sign of my eccentricity, my detachment. One evening, I overheard Dad on the phone, his voice hushed but clearly audible through the thin floorboards of my attic. "Yes, Michael," he was saying. "I'm worried about Alex. Still no progress on a real job. Just holed up in the attic, wasting time. I don't know what to do with him. He's such a A disappointment. The word hit me like a physical blow. Disappointment. It stung deeply all my life. I had tried to avoid that label. I had tried to be good, to be smart, to be what they wanted. And here I was, after pouring years of my life into something truly innovative, still being labeled a disappointment because it didn't fit their narrow, materialistic definition of success. The anger, cold and steady, became a burning resolve. Fine. If that's what they thought of me, then fine. I would embrace it. I would use their negativity as fuel. I would prove to myself, and to the world, that their judgment was utterly, spectacularly wrong. It was around this time that the communication with Catalyst Ventures escalated. My initial demo had led to multiple calls, then a series of in-depth technical reviews. They brought in their own team of AI specialists, their education strategists, their market analysts. Each meeting, conducted discreetly in rented office spaces or through encrypted video calls, felt like another step up a very steep, exciting ladder. They asked piercing questions, challenged my assumptions, but unlike my family, they understood the language of innovation, the potential of disruption. They saw the Ignite platform not as a computer thing, but as a potential game changer. The negotiations for investment became serious. Very serious. We were talking millions, potentially tens of millions, in funding. This wasn't just a seed round. It was a full-fledged commitment to bringing Ignite to market at scale. It meant building a team, securing patents, and developing a full-fledged company. It was terrifying, exhilarating, and completely beyond my family's comprehension. My increasing need for secrecy fueled their suspicions. I was often out for freelance meetings, which were really high-stakes discussions with venture capitalists. My phone would buzz with calls from unknown numbers from Catalyst Ventures' various team members that I had to quickly dismiss or take in hushed tones in the backyard. My family saw this as further proof of my shifty nature, my avoidance of real work. Alex is acting very strange lately, I overheard Mom tell Dad one morning. He's always on the phone, whispering. What do you think he's doing? Probably getting involved in some pyramid scheme. Dad scoffed, not looking up from his tablet. That's what happens when you don't have a structured job. You fall for these get-rich-quick scams. Their utter lack of imagination, their complete inability to conceive of a success story outside their narrow worldview, was staggering. They had already written me off, cast me as the failure in their family narrative. They thought they knew my story. They had no idea the real climax was about to unfold right on their doorstep. The day the deal was finalized with Catalyst Ventures was surreal. I signed the documents in a sleek, anonymous conference room downtown, the weight of the pen in my hand feeling monumental. My small, independent dream was now backed by serious capital, by a team of experienced professionals who believed in my vision. I was no longer just an attic inventor. I was a founder, a CEO in the making, about to lead a company that would truly revolutionize education. The final step was a formal kickoff meeting requested by Catalyst Ventures. They insisted on holding it at my headquarters, which, to their surprise, was my attic apartment. They wanted to see where the magic truly happened, to get a sense of the raw, unfiltered passion that had birthed Ignite. They also wanted to meet the family, a quaint, old-fashioned courtesy call, a way to acknowledge the founder's roots. I reluctantly agreed, knowing this would be the ultimate public unveiling of my failure to my family. I gave them a specific date and time. A Saturday morning, I told my family I had an important freelance meeting at the house and asked them to clear out, to avoid distractions. They scoffed. Of course, probably thinking I was putting on airs. An important meeting in the attic, Michael sneered. Who are you trying to impress? Alex. You'll see, I replied, a small knowing smile touching my lips. They had no idea. They had no idea that the failure living in their attic was about to host a meeting that would change everything, not just for me, but for their rigid worldview. The fleet of black cars was coming, and their carefully constructed narrative of my inadequacy was about to be utterly, spectacularly demolished. The morning of the private meeting dawned, crisp and clear, downstairs. The usual Saturday chaos reigned. Mom was bustling around, probably planning her next garden club luncheon. Dad was in his den. The faint murmur of financial news from his tablet, a constant backdrop. Michael was likely still asleep in his perfect McMansion across town, oblivious to the fact that his failure brother was about to host a pivotal meeting. They had no idea. And that, in itself, was a victory. I, meanwhile, was a bundle of nerves and exhilaration. I had cleaned my attic apartment meticulously, making it presentable, yet ensuring it retained its authentic, slightly chaotic, inventor's charm. My whiteboards, covered in complex algorithms and user flow diagrams, were left exactly as they were, a testament to the years of solitary, unacknowledged work that had brought me to this moment. I brewed a large pot of artisanal coffee, something I usually only indulged in when working late nights, and set out a plate of store-bought pastries. It was far from the lavish spreads my mother would prepare, but it was honest. As the designated time approached, I saw my parents stirring below. Mom called up the stairs. "Alex, your meeting guests will be here soon, won't they? Are you sure you shouldn't have moved it to a proper office? It looks a bit rustic up there." Her voice was a mixture of concern and thinly veiled embarrassment. "It's perfect, Mom," I called back, a small smile playing on my lips. "It's exactly where it needs to be." Dad, from his den, boomed. "Don't expect too much, Eleanor. Probably just some other entrepreneurs with big ideas and empty pockets." His dismissiveness stung, but also fueled a cold resolve. He thought he knew me. He thought he knew my potential. He was about to be proven profoundly wrong. Michael called, ostensibly to check in. "Hey, Alex," he said, his voice casual. "Heard you're having some kind of meeting today. Who are you trying to impress? Man, is it that weird tech group you used to hang out with?" He chuckled, clearly thinking it was some amateur hour gathering. "You'll see, Michael," I replied, my voice calm, almost enigmatic. "You'll definitely see." I hung up, a sense of quiet triumph building in my chest. Then I heard it, the faint, distant hum of powerful engines. A murmur from the street. My heart pounded. This was it. I walked over to my attic window, which offered a surprisingly clear view of our quiet suburban street. And there they were. First, a sleek, black Mercedes pulled up to the curb. Then, a black Audi, right behind it, followed by a black Cadillac Escalade. A fleet of black cars, not just one or two, but three imposing vehicles, gleaming in the morning sun, pulling up precisely in front of my parents' meticulously manicured lawn. My jaw dropped. Even though I knew they were coming, the sheer visual impact was undeniable. These weren't friends. These weren't local freelancers. These were serious players. The kind of cars my father coveted. The kind of people Michael aspired to be. The drivers, all dressed in sharp, dark suits, emerged from the vehicles, opening the back doors with practiced ease. Out of the first Mercedes stepped Mr. Thomas Vance, the senior partner at Catalyst Ventures, a legendary figure in the edtech investment world, a man whose name commanded respect, whose firm had backed some of the biggest tech success stories of the past decade. He was followed by Dr. Evelyn Reed, Catalyst's head of AI research, a brilliant, no-nonsense woman I had deeply respected during our negotiations. From the Audi emerged Ms. Clara Jensen, their lead legal counsel, crisp and professional, and from the Escalade, two stern-faced security personnel, discreetly scanning the surroundings. They looked like they were arriving for a high-stakes corporate takeover, not a meeting in a suburban attic. Downstairs, the house had gone silent. My parents, drawn by the unusual sight, had clearly come to the front windows. I could picture their faces' confusion, curiosity, and then, slowly, a dawning realization. The black cars weren't pulling up to Michael's house. They were at our house, for me. I heard Mom's sharp intake of breath, then Dad's low, incredulous murmur. I could almost feel their eyes on me, wondering, what is going on? The front doorbell chimed, a deep, resonant sound that cut through the silence. I took a deep breath, composed myself, and walked down the attic stairs. My legs felt a little shaky, but my resolve was solid. This was my moment. I opened the front door. Mr. Vance stood on the porch, a polite but expectant smile on his face. "Alex," he said, extending a hand, his voice calm and authoritative. "Thank you for having us, Thomas Vance, Catalyst Ventures. We're very excited for our private meeting." "Mr. Vance," I replied, shaking his hand firmly. "Welcome. Please, come in. The others, too." As the formidable group of executives, impeccably dressed and radiating an aura of power, stepped into our modest entryway, my parents emerged from the living room, drawn by the commotion. Their faces were a mixture of utter disbelief and poorly concealed panic. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Dad's jaw hung slightly agape. Mr. Vance, Dr. Reed, and Miss Jensen nodded politely at my parents, their expressions professional but unyielding. They weren't here for small talk. They were here for business. My business. "Mom, Dad," I said, a slight, knowing smile on my face, enjoying their stunned expressions. "These are my guests for the meeting, Mr. Thomas Vance, Dr. Evelyn Reed, and Ms. Clara Jensen from Catalyst Ventures. They're here for a private meeting about my project, Ignite." The names hung in the air like thunder. Catalyst Ventures, the top-tier edtech VC firm. Names that even my father, with all his business acumen, would recognize and respect. Names that spelled serious money, serious influence, and serious success. Dad's face was a masterpiece of conflicting emotions, utter bewilderment, dawning horror, and a desperate attempt to regain his composure. "Catalyst Ventures," he stammered, his voice losing its usual booming authority. But Alex, you said it was just a freelance meeting." "Indeed, Richard," Mr. Vance interjected, his voice polite but firm, cutting off my father's attempt to assert control. "Mr. Miller, I presume Alex has been incredibly discreet about his groundbreaking work. We've been in advanced discussions for some time about a significant investment in his Ignite platform. We're very impressed with what he's built." Mom, flustered, tried to interject. But Alex has just been in the attic, on his computer. We thought he was, well, just taking his time. She waved a vague hand, trying to justify their long-standing narrative of my failure. Dr. Reed, with a sharp, intelligent gaze, cut her off. "Mrs. Miller, what Alex has been doing in the attic is developing an AI-driven personalized learning system that we believe has the potential to revolutionize global education. It's truly visionary work. It's exactly the kind of disruptive innovation that Catalyst Ventures invests in." Her words carried the weight of undeniable expertise, silencing Mom's feeble excuses. Mrs. Jensen, the lawyer, simply observed, a faint, almost imperceptible smirk touching her lips. The two security personnel stood silently, imposing figures in the background, making it clear this was a serious, no-nonsense affair. The shift in dynamics was instantaneous and absolute. Their smug certainty, their dismissive judgment, their carefully constructed narrative of my failure, it all crumbled in that moment, exposed by the presence of the black cars and the powerful figures who had emerged from them. All for me. Dad, still struggling to process, tried one last attempt at asserting control, or at least understanding. A significant investment, but Alex doesn't even have a company. He just has an idea. "Mr. Miller," Mr. Vance replied, a hint of steel in his voice. "Alex is the company. Ignite is his vision, and we are here to ensure that vision reaches its full potential. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have a very important meeting scheduled. Alex, lead the way." I nodded, a triumphant flutter in my chest. "This way, gentlemen, Dr. Reed. Ms. Jensen," I said, gesturing towards the stairs leading to my attic apartment. My office is upstairs. As I led the group up the narrow attic stairs, I glanced back. My parents were standing in the entryway, frozen, their faces a tableau of shock, confusion, and utter humiliation. Their failure was leading a fleet of black cars and powerful investors to his playroom. Their entire worldview, their rigid definition of success, was being shattered right before their eyes. I heard Dad let out a small, choked sound, a mixture of disbelief and frustrated rage. Mom looked like she was about to faint. They were witnessing the undeniable, public proof of how wrong they had been, how profoundly they had underestimated me. The years of quiet dismissal, of calling me a failure, had culminated in this spectacular, silent rebuke. Upstairs, in my small, cluttered attic, the meeting began. The air, once filled with my solitary struggles, was now thick with intellectual energy. With the hum of high-stakes discussions, I presented my detailed projections, my technical breakthroughs, my market strategy. Mr. Vance, Dr. Reed, and Ms. Jensen listened intently, their questions sharp, their engagement profound. This was the recognition I had craved, the validation I had earned. Downstairs, I could only imagine the pandemonium. My parents, undoubtedly reeling, were left to grapple with the seismic shift in their reality. Their failure was no longer just a label, it was a powerful, successful innovator, hosting a meeting that would define his future, and theirs, in ways they never expected. The fleet of black cars had arrived, and with them, the undeniable truth that their judgment had been utterly, spectacularly wrong. This was the moment their world, and their perception of me, irrevocably changed. The hum of high-stakes conversation from my attic apartment was likely just a muffled buzz downstairs. But the sudden, undeniable presence of 3 black luxury cars, parked conspicuously outside our suburban home, spoke a language my family understood perfectly: power, influence, and success. My parents, Richard and Eleanor, and later, my brother Michael, were left reeling in the aftermath of that shocking arrival. If you've ever seen someone's smug certainty shatter into utter bewilderment, you know the exquisite, almost unbelievable satisfaction of that moment. Inside my attic, the meeting with Thomas Vance, Dr. Evelyn Reed, and Miss Clara Jensen from Catalyst Ventures was exhilarating. We dove deep into the technical intricacies of Ignite, the market potential, and the strategic rollout. My whiteboards, once a silent testament to my solitary grind, now hummed with collaborative energy as Dr. Reed sketched out new algorithm enhancements and Thomas Vance mapped out market entry strategies. "Alex," Thomas Vance said, his eyes gleaming with excitement, "what you've built here is more than just an AI. It's a platform that genuinely disrupts traditional education. The adaptive learning capabilities are unparalleled. We're looking at a multi-billion-dollar market opportunity." I felt a surge of pride, a validation so profound it eclipsed years of my family's dismissive remarks. This was the recognition I had craved, not for their approval, but for the inherent worth of my work. Meanwhile, downstairs, I could only imagine the chaos. After I led the Catalyst Ventures team upstairs, the front door had been left ajar. I knew my parents would be trying to process what they had just seen. Their failure, the son who wasted time in the attic, was now hosting a meeting with industry titans. It was completely outside their narrow worldview of corporate ladders and real estate deals. The silence from downstairs was unnerving. I knew they were desperate for information, but they wouldn't dare interrupt. That was part of my subtle victory. For once, they were the ones on the outside, peering in, desperate for scraps of understanding. About an hour into our meeting, I heard a car pull up outside. Then, hurried footsteps on the porch. The front door opened and slammed shut. It had to be Michael, my older brother, the golden child, probably summoned by a frantic call from Mom or Dad, now arriving just in time to witness the spectacular dismantling of his own superiority complex. I pictured him walking into the living room, seeing his parents' flustered faces, and then looking out the window at the imposing black cars. The realization must have hit him like a physical blow. His loser brother, the disappointment, was hosting these kinds of people. Downstairs, I imagined the urgent whispers, the frantic questions. "Michael, do you know who those people are?" Mom would shriek. "Catalyst Ventures. Your father says they're huge." And Michael, who had always lorded his success over me, would have to confront the truth. The very world he operated in, high finance, venture capital, was now intersecting with my world, in a way he never anticipated. The humiliation for him, the shock, must have been immense. He had always dismissed my work as trivial, my ambition as naive. Now, the proof of its significance was literally parked in the driveway. Our meeting continued for another 2 hours. We finalized key terms, discussed intellectual property, and outlined the hiring plan for the initial Ignite team. Dr. Reed was particularly excited about the technical roadmap. Miss Jensen, the lawyer, ensured all legal ducks were in a row for the investment. By the time we finished, a comprehensive plan was in place, ready to propel Ignite from a passion project to a fully funded, operational startup. As we prepared to descend the stairs, Thomas Vance turned to me, a genuine smile on his face. "Alex," he said, "we are incredibly impressed, not just with Ignite, but with your vision and resilience. We look forward to building something truly revolutionary together. Welcome to the Catalyst Ventures family." That phrase, the Catalyst Ventures family, resonated deeply. It was a family built on shared vision, mutual respect, and a belief in innovation, not on arbitrary judgment or financial control. It was everything my own biological family wasn't. We walked down the stairs, a united front of powerful individuals. My parents and Michael were waiting in the living room, a palpable tension in the air. Their faces were etched with a desperate curiosity, their forced politeness barely masking their turmoil. "Alex," Mom began, her voice a strained whisper. "The meeting, how did it go?" She was trying to sound casual, but her eyes darted from my face to the retreating figures of the Catalyst team. "It went very well, Mom," I replied, my voice calm and confident. Catalyst Ventures is officially investing a significant amount of capital into Ignite. We're talking about a multi-million-dollar seed round, with commitments for Series A. Their eyes widened. Michael gasped, my father, who had been trying to maintain an air of detached interest, suddenly looked like he'd been punched in the gut. Multi-million-dollar, that was the language he understood. That was a number that, even for him, was impossible to dismiss. "Multi-million, Adiha," Dad stammered, his face pale. But you're just in the attic. You don't have a company." "I do now, Dad," I stated, a quiet triumph in my voice. Catalyst Ventures isn't just investing in an idea, they're investing in a company. Ignite Solutions, Inc. will be formalizing everything in the coming weeks, securing a proper office space, and building a team. I'll be the CEO and founder. The words CEO and founder hung in the air, heavy with implications. Michael, the golden child, the rising star in investment banking, suddenly looked like he'd shrunk. His carefully constructed facade of success, built on traditional corporate structures, was being challenged by his failure brother, who had just secured millions for a visionary startup. But how?" Mom asked, her voice bordering on a whine. "You were just playing on your computer." "What you called playing on my computer?" "Mom," I replied, a hint of steel in my voice, "was years of dedicated research, intricate coding, and building a revolutionary AI platform. It was work that you dismissed, that you called a waste of time, that you constantly compared to Michael's real job. But it was my work, my passion, and it turned out to be worth millions to people who actually understand innovation." Dad finally found his voice, a desperate attempt to regain control. "But you kept it a secret from your own family. How could you not tell us about such a significant development?" His tone was accusatory, trying to shift the blame to me. "Tell you?" I scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping me. "Tell the people who constantly called me a failure, who mocked my dreams, who told me to get a real job, who overheard Mom calling me a disappointment just weeks ago. Do you honestly think I would entrust my vision, my passion, my years of hard work, to people who consistently undermine me, judge me, and actively try to diminish my self-worth?" The truth hung in the air, undeniable. Michael stepped forward, his face red. "Alex, that's unfair. We just wanted what was best for you. Dad was worried." "Worried?" "Michael," I challenged. "Or worried that I wasn't conforming to his expectations. Worried that I wasn't reflecting well on him. You all consistently devalued my path, my efforts, my very being, because it didn't fit your narrow definition of success. You called me a failure because I wasn't like you. Well, guess what? I never wanted to be like you. And now, I don't have to be." Dad, visibly shaking, tried one last time. "But Alex, we're family. We could have helped you. We could have invested the Miller name." "The Miller name," I interrupted, cutting him off, "is precisely why I kept it a secret. I wanted Ignite to succeed on its own merits, built on my own hard work, not on your connections or your condescending help. And as for family, what kind of family calls their child a failure for pursuing their passion? What kind of family judges every choice based on financial gain and social conformity? I looked at each of them, my gaze unwavering. The fleet of black cars wasn't just for a meeting, Mom. It was the physical manifestation of years of my silent grind, my unwavering belief, and your profound underestimation of me. You called me a failure. The world, and Catalyst Ventures, is about to call me a success. And with that, I turned and walked out of the house. I didn't storm out. I walked out calmly, with dignity, leaving them standing in the living room, stunned into silence, surrounded by the echoes of their own judgments and the undeniable proof of my triumph. The black cars were gone, but their impact lingered, a powerful, unspoken challenge to their entire worldview. I drove away, not to my small attic apartment in their house, but to my temporary co-working space, downtown. Already buzzing with the energy of building a team, the old house and the labels they had placed on me were officially in my rearview mirror. My journey from failure to CEO had officially begun, and it was a path I forged entirely on my own terms. Fueled by their disbelief and powered by my unwavering self-belief, the days and weeks following the private meeting at my parents' house were a whirlwind. For me, they were filled with exhilarating work, the tangible reality of building Ignite Solutions, Inc. from the ground up. For my family, they were a period of intense, humiliating bewilderment. If you've ever watched someone's carefully constructed world crumble because they completely underestimated you, you know the potent mix of satisfaction and disbelief that washed over me. My focus, however, remained squarely on the future. The very next Monday, I was at Catalyst Ventures' sleek downtown offices, not as a nervous presenter, but as the newly minted CEO of Ignite Solutions, Inc. My team at Catalyst, particularly Thomas Vance, Dr. Evelyn Reed, and Ms. Clara Jensen, wasted no time. We immediately began the process of securing dedicated office space, establishing legal entities, and, most excitingly, building our core team. Alex, Thomas Vance said during our first official strategy meeting, your vision for Ignite is compelling, but execution is everything. We need the best talent. You'll lead the charge on that. I plunged into the work with a fervor I hadn't felt in years. My days were a blur of interviews, legal consultations, and coding sessions. I hired brilliant, like-minded individuals who believed in the mission of Ignite as passionately as I did. We found a collaborative, open-plan office space that buzzed with creative energy, a stark contrast to the stifling silence of my attic. This wasn't just a company, it was a community built on shared purpose and mutual respect. Meanwhile, at home, the aftermath of the black car's visit continued to unfold. I maintained a deliberate distance, allowing them to process the shock on their own terms. My phone, once filled with their incessant criticisms, was now ringing with frantic, confused calls from my mother and brother, which I mostly let go to voicemail. I responded to their texts with brief, professional updates, maintaining an emotional boundary. Alex, what is all this about Ignite Solutions? Mom texted, her words laced with panic. Michael said he saw a press release, a new company, and you're the CEO. What does this mean? I replied, it means my project is now a company. It's a significant investment by Catalyst Ventures. My schedule is very demanding. All further inquiries can be directed to my executive assistant at Ignite. A small silent smirk played on my lips as I typed. The idea of them having to go through my assistant was delicious. My father, Richard, typically responded with anger, his texts brief and accusatory. You kept this from us, your own family. This is an insult, Alex. We deserve to know. I didn't respond to his accusations. He expected me to justify myself, to explain. But I had spent years doing that, and it had gotten me nowhere. My silence was now my power. Michael, the golden child, was perhaps the most visibly affected. His entire identity was wrapped up in his success and his parents' approval. My unexpected triumph, achieved outside his traditional corporate world, threatened his carefully constructed superiority. He called me repeatedly, his voice a mixture of disbelief, resentment, and a desperate attempt to understand. Alex, seriously, what is this Ignite thing? He'd demand. Catalyst Ventures. How did you even get in with them? Dad's furious. He thinks you've pulled some kind of fast one. It's not a thing, Michael, it's a company. I'd calmly explain. And I got in with them by building a groundbreaking AI platform that they believe has massive potential. Something I've been doing in the attic for years, while you all called me a failure and told me to get a real job. His attempts at condescension now sounded hollow. Look, I can help you with the business side, he'd offer, trying to insert himself into my newfound success. I know how VCs work. I can advise you. I have a team of highly experienced professionals at Catalyst Ventures advising me. Michael, I'd reply, politely but firmly. And a brilliant legal team. I appreciate the offer, but I'm all set. He couldn't stand it. He tried to undermine me. Even now, he called Dr. Sharma, my former professor, trying to get details about the real story behind Ignite, implying I was perhaps exaggerating my role. Dr. Sharma, fiercely loyal and professional, simply directed him to Catalyst Ventures' public statements. He called old colleagues from my brief stint in corporate tech, trying to dig up dirt, but there was no dirt, just years of hard work. The public unveiling of Ignite Solutions, Inc. and its multi-million-dollar funding round was handled by Catalyst Ventures' PR team. The news exploded in the tech and edtech sectors. Major industry publications ran features. My name, once whispered with disappointment in my family home, was now proudly displayed as CEO and founder of Ignite Solutions, Inc. The articles highlighted the innovative potential of personalized AI learning and subtly. My journey from an independent developer to a funded CEO. My family saw it all. They couldn't avoid it. The calls and texts from my parents intensified. Their desperation grew. They were no longer just curious. They were openly flustered, confused, and seemed to be grappling with a profound sense of humiliation. One Sunday, they demanded I come over for dinner. We need to talk about all this, Alex, Mom said, her voice unusually stern. This is affecting the family. There are rumors. I decided it was time for a direct confrontation. On my terms, I arrived at their house, not in my usual casual clothes, but in a tailored professional suit, the kind they had always admired on Michael. My demeanor was calm, confident, and utterly unyielding. The dinner table was set, but the tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Dad, Mom, and Michael were there, their faces a mixture of forced smiles and simmering resentment. Alex, Dad began, clearing his throat, his voice lacking its usual booming authority. This Ignite Solutions. It's all very sudden, and frankly, we're confused. And a little hurt that you kept it from us. Hurt, I scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping me. Hurt, Dad, for years. You called me a failure. You mocked my passion, my work, telling me to get a real job. You said I was wasting time in the attic. Mom called me a disappointment to her friends. Michael constantly belittled my efforts, comparing me to his success. You created an environment where my dreams were ridiculed, where my very identity was devalued. That was tough love, Alex, Mom interjected, her voice defensive. We just wanted what was best for you. Tough love, I challenged, my voice calm but firm. No, Mom, that was emotional abuse. That was a calculated attempt to break my spirit, to make me conform to your narrow definition of success. You didn't want what was best for me. You wanted what was best for your image. You wanted a son who fit neatly into your preconceived notions, not the one who dared to forge his own path. I looked at Michael. And you, Michael. You constantly reinforced their narrative, smugly believing your traditional corporate job made you superior. You scoffed at my little apps and visions. Well, those little apps just secured multi-million-dollar funding, and that vision is about to revolutionize an industry. Michael shifted uncomfortably in his seat, unable to meet my gaze. The fleet of black cars that arrived at your doorstep, I continued, looking back at my parents, wasn't just a private meeting. It was the direct result of years of my failure, my wasted time in the attic. It was the culmination of my unwavering belief in myself. Despite your constant efforts to undermine it, you called me a failure. The world called me a CEO. Dad slammed his hand on the table, but it lacked his usual force. So, you're just rubbing our faces in it. Alex, is that it after all we've done for you? Rubbing your faces in it. Dad, I repeated, a dry, humorless laugh escaping me. No, I'm stating the truth. I'm holding you accountable. For years, you used your words, your judgment, and your financial influence to control and diminish me. Now, I'm simply demonstrating the consequences of your actions. My success isn't about proving you wrong. It's about proving myself right. What do you want, Alex? Mom asked, her voice small, almost defeated. Do you want us to apologize? I want genuine respect. Mom, I said, my voice softening slightly, but still firm. Not a performative apology. I want you to acknowledge that my path, my passions, and my definition of success are valid. I want you to stop comparing me to Michael, to stop judging my life by your outdated metrics. I want boundaries. If we are to have any kind of relationship moving forward, it has to be based on mutual respect, not on your desire for control or your need for me to conform. Dad and Michael remained silent, their faces a mix of shame, anger, and utter bewilderment. They realized, perhaps for the first time, that their words had consequences, and that their attempts at control had ultimately led to their public humiliation and my undeniable triumph. The power dynamic had irrevocably shifted. I was no longer the son seeking their approval. I was the CEO, defining my own terms. The dinner ended in a tense silence. I left shortly after, the weight of their disappointment no longer heavy on my shoulders. I had spoken my truth, set my boundaries, and claimed my autonomy. The confrontation was painful, but it was necessary for my liberation. They had called me a failure. I had shown them what true success looked like. On my own terms, the dinner, or rather, the confrontation, at my parents' house marked a definitive turning point. I had spoken my truth, laid bare their years of subtle emotional abuse and judgment, and, most powerfully, shown them the undeniable proof of my failure's spectacular success. Walking out of that house, leaving them stunned in their perfectly manicured living room, felt like shedding a skin. The old Alex, constantly seeking approval, silently resenting, was gone. In his place was someone lighter, stronger, and unequivocally free. The immediate aftermath for my family was a mix of continued bewilderment and forced attempts at reconciliation, albeit on their terms. Richard Dad and Eleanor Mom initially tried to act as if nothing had fundamentally changed. They'd call, trying to insert themselves into my new professional life, offering advice that quickly revealed their utter lack of understanding of the tech world. Alex, Dad would say, his voice lacking its usual booming confidence. I was talking to a contact at Northwood Investments. They're looking for new talent. Maybe you could connect with them, get some real capital for Ignite. He was still trying to manage my career, to fit it into his traditional framework. I'd politely but firmly redirect him. Thanks, Dad, but Catalyst Ventures handles all our funding. We're fully capitalized. My answers were brief, professional, and left no room for negotiation or his perceived help. Mom would try to appeal to emotion. Alex, your father and I are worried about you. This startup life must be so stressful. You're working so hard. Don't forget about family dinners. She was attempting to pull me back into the old dynamic, where her concern was a leash. I appreciate your concern, Mom, I'd reply calmly. But I'm thriving, and I'll come to dinner when my schedule permits, and when we can have a respectful conversation, free of judgment about my work. Michael, my older brother, was a more complex case. His initial reaction had been a mixture of resentment and bewildered insecurity. He saw my success as a direct challenge to his own carefully constructed corporate identity. But as Ignite Solutions, Inc. continued to gain traction in the press, as my name appeared on more industry lists and awards, a subtle shift occurred in him. He never truly apologized for his past dismissiveness, but his tone became less condescending, more curious. He'd call, occasionally, to ask genuine questions about the edtech market or AI trends, something he never did before. It was a tentative olive branch, a cautious acknowledgement of my expertise. I met him halfway, engaging in professional discussions, but always maintaining a clear boundary around my personal life and our past conflicts. We weren't suddenly best friends, but a grudging, professional respect began to form. It was a small victory, but a genuine one. my redefined success, and our changed family dynamics. The real triumph wasn't just in the millions of dollars of funding or the rapid growth of Ignite. It was in my redefined sense of success and the profound shift in my family dynamics. Ignite Solutions, Inc. rapidly became a recognized force in the edtech world. Our personalized learning AI, once just lines of code in my attic, was now impacting thousands of students globally. We partnered with major school districts, received accolades from educational nonprofits, and our user base grew exponentially. My vision of making education truly accessible and engaging was becoming a reality. As CEO, I led a brilliant and dedicated team, fostering a culture of innovation, collaboration, and crucially, mutual respect, everything my family's environment lacked. My journey from being branded a failure to becoming a CEO of a groundbreaking tech company was a powerful testament to the importance of perseverance and self-belief. It taught me invaluable lessons that transcended the professional sphere, defining success on your own terms for years. I allowed my family's narrow materialistic definition of success to dictate my self-worth. I learned that true success isn't measured by how much money you make or how conventional your career path is, but by your purpose, your impact, and your genuine happiness. My work with Ignite brought me a profound sense of fulfillment that no six-figure corporate job ever could. The power of unwavering self-belief. When everyone around you, especially your closest family, calls you a failure, it's incredibly difficult to maintain faith in yourself. But my unwavering conviction in Ignite and its potential, fueled by Dr. Sharma's mentorship and my own dedication, proved to be my greatest strength. It was that self-belief that attracted Catalyst Ventures and allowed me to push through the relentless criticism. Boundaries are liberation. The most significant change in my life was the establishment of firm, non-negotiable boundaries with my family. I learned that I could love them, but I didn't have to tolerate their disrespect or allow their negativity to dictate my emotional state. My calm, consistent refusal to engage in their old patterns of manipulation forced them to adapt, or face my complete emotional distance. This liberation was more valuable than any inheritance. Validation comes from within and the right external sources. I spent years seeking my parents' approval, never truly receiving it. I learned that genuine validation comes from within, from knowing your worth, and from the support of people who truly see and believe in you, like Dr. Sharma and the team at Catalyst Ventures. Their belief in me, when my own family dismissed me, was a crucial turning point, turning adversity into fuel. Their constant criticisms, their labels of failure, instead of breaking me, became a powerful fuel. Every dismissive comment, every snide remark, intensified my resolve to prove myself right, not just to them, but to myself. Their negativity, ironically, became a catalyst for my greatest achievements. My relationship with my parents never fully healed into the idyllic family dynamic they often portrayed to the outside world. There were no grand apologies from their end, no sudden epiphanies, but there was a grudging respect, a quiet acknowledgement of my accomplishments they could no longer deny. When Ignite was featured in Forbes, or I was invited to speak at major tech conferences, they would mention it, almost casually, to their friends, trying to claim a sliver of my success. But the underlying power dynamic had forever shifted. I was no longer seeking their approval. They were quietly trying to understand my world. I continued to live in my own apartment, cultivating a life that was truly mine. My space was a reflection of my autonomy, my peace, and my passions. I invested in my own well-being, both physical and mental, ensuring I maintained the balance that my demanding career required. I sought out communities and friendships that nourished my soul, surrounding myself with people who celebrated my journey and respected my choices. The journey from the attic, from being called a failure by my own family to leading a multi-million-dollar company, was the most challenging and transformative experience of my life. It taught me that genuine success is not dictated by others' expectations or defined by material wealth alone. It is found in the courage to pursue your passion, the resilience to overcome adversity, and the unwavering belief in your own worth, even when those closest to you cannot see it. The fleet of black cars that arrived at my door wasn't just for a meeting. It was a powerful, undeniable symbol of my personal revolution, a vivid illustration that sometimes the greatest triumphs emerge from the deepest disappointments, and for that, in a strange and profound way, I am grateful for every single time they called me a failure. It was the greatest gift they ever gave me. If you're out there, listening to this, and you've ever been called a failure by the people who should have championed you, remember my story. Remember that your worth is not defined by their limited vision. Your passion is valid, your dreams are real, and with unwavering belief in yourself, the right support, and relentless dedication, you can build a legacy far greater than any label they try to put on you. The path to true success is often forged in the fires of adversity, and the sweetest victory is the one you achieve on your own terms. Thank you for listening to my journey. If it resonated with you, please hit that like and subscribe button. Share your own experiences with overcoming judgment and defining your own success in the comments below. And please, share this video with anyone who needs a reminder that their failure might just be the seed of their greatest triumph.